All right. We're live. Yeah, we'll just wait on a few attendees. I'm just going to do a quick voice check. Just wait on a few attendees. I'm just going to do a quick voice check. Yeah, that sounds good. Can you just say something, Wayne?
Hello?
Can you just...
Does that work? Hello?
Yep, that works perfect. I've just got this echo going through because it's like I'm playing it in the browser and then it's going back through the stream.
Right,
it's like,
right.
Got a few attendees.
Oh, right. I should have said something else. Yeah,
Yes.
okay. So you can hear it over and over again.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
It's the thing is like, I have to agree. I like the concept. I really do. Yeah, I know that this is very interesting news. So, Tesla's actually bought into Liontown, which is the lithium company. They basically are now an offtake partner. So they basically want to buy like a certain amount of lithium, which is excellent news. Stock prices going through the floor at the moment because of what's happening in Europe, but it's an excellent outcome because it means that Tesla are coming to the party, and then the other offtake partner at the moment is LGE, which they make batteries for Tesla as well as they make batteries for a whole bunch of other companies. So that's like their new South Korean enterprise joint venture thing there. So yeah, it's exciting.
I mean, they're going to sort this battery tech out too. Like, if you look back to cars when they first came out, like combustion engines, they were laughable. Like they was, you get a V8 making like the same power as a mower, and now they're much better.
You reminded me of this video. It was like this guy modded in the world's first car in not Gran Turismo, iRacing. This thing has a top speed of like 12 k's an hour.
Wow.
It goes faster in neutral than it goes in drive. So when you're going down a hill, you just basically stick it in drive, and like it's three wheels.
Stick it in neutral and roll.
And it's basically like it literally is like a horse and carriage. And there's a wheel on the front, and it's like this. It's like a Reliant Robin kind of like 3-wheel thing.
Yeah.
And anyway, and he basically did the Nuremberg track with it, and it took him over an hour. And the problem was that there wasn't enough torque in the motor to get up some of the hills, so we had to like zigzag up the hill.
That's where electric cars are now. Like what we're getting right now is nothing like what we're going to get once they've had time to develop them.
Yeah, have you seen what was a couple of years ago when Richard Hammond had that accident?
Which one?
The one where he went off the side after the hill climb. That car.
The Rimac.
Yeah, that car was 1,000 horsepower at each wheel. Like that was an electric car. Like that's a lot of power, and that's just like, man, they're getting good at it. Yeah.
Yeah. And they'll get better. The batteries will get better. And everything will get better.
Yeah. And that's what I don't understand the argument. It's normally from Clive Palmer or a couple of those others and associates are like, electricity costs are going to go up with electric cars. We've got to keep the coal. I'm like, okay, electricity costs will go up. That's fair. But you're not going to pay any petrol. And I don't know if you've driven past the petrol station at the moment. It's $1.80 cheap. Yeah. Some places it's $2, and that's just for unleaded. So it's going to be definitely a case of swings and roundabouts. Sure, you might pay more electricity, but you're not going to be paying petrol. So it's going to basically even itself out.
Yeah.
Rooftop solar probably is not getting put on at the same rate as it used to be. But it's going to continue to be put out there. So it's going to bring down the cost of production, and it will offset some of what you're putting into your car. So really, it's not a very good argument at the end of the day.
No.
I think that the biggest thing for me is like, I'm not convinced, we're fully there, is that I'm not, and this is whether this is my mindset or not, it's the fact that if I want to be able to go into service station, fill my car up 2 minutes flat, not provided that there's no line, but fill my car up 2 minutes flat and then drive off. And I shouldn't have to be worried. I don't want to have to sit there and wait an hour for my car to charge or half an hour.
They'll fix that too.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. When they get to that point, this just comes down to the adoption curve. I've been humming about this for ages now. it's all about the adoption curve. And like right now, we're still in the early adopters part where basically, you know, they're still nailing out all these bugs. And guess what? Cars had the same thing. I was actually looking at the stats on that. And like, you know, when the first Model T came out, you know, that was, that really was kind of the tipping point. But before that, it was like, you know, people were like, what is this contraption, you know?
Yeah. I'll take my horse and cart any day. That thing's so slow and unreliable and expensive. It's useless. It's just an electric car.
Yeah, just got to feed the horse a bucket of oats and it's good to go. And it's car, got to take it in, change the oil, put fuel in it.
That's
ridiculous.
Exactly right.
Fix the punches, yeah.
And the thing is, and that's really, it comes down to like, you know, the innovations that within the car. And it's just like even the little things like wheel tread. So wheel tread, the reason why when we drive our car, we act like if you ride your bike and you go down a hill, you get hit. And the reason why is the tread's exactly the same. But on a car, the tread's actually, like the tread pattern differs every piece. And the reason why is it removes that, the noise.
Yeah, insane amount of detail.
Yeah, it's just a level of detail that goes into this, you know. And that, I'll be honest, motorsports also helps. Everything that gets invented in a motorsport eventually makes its way into the car. So, all right, we'll keep it a couple extra minutes, and then we'll kick it off. So just hang around for a little bit longer, and then we'll kick it off.
Hello to everyone else who's joined as well.
Yeah.
Welcome to Car Chat.
Yeah. where we talk
We're
about
solving the world's problems.
Yeah.
Hey guys, how you going? I'm just eating dinner. So I'm having my camera and microphone off so I don't hear me chewing.
Oh, no problem.
That's all right. Yeah, no worries.
I just ate in front of everyone before, so it's. I've got another meeting straight after this one. I'll have to leave it early.
Fair enough.
That's all right. All the good stuff's at the end.
Yeah.
I saved all the best demos for the end.
I'll catch the VOD.
Yeah. It might actually be a fairly short talk tonight. We'll see. I haven't actually timed it. I just built what I wanted to. I just wrote down what I wanted to talk about, and then I didn't time it or anything. So who knows how long it'll be.
Yeah, that's like tomorrow. I got a DM message, and I said, "Oh yeah, I'll deliver a talk tomorrow for where I work." And I was like, "Oh." I was humming and hawing, do I want to talk about automation? Like, because it's an automation kind of like meeting for about an hour, and you can kind of like, you know, it's a bit like a little bit of like a, you know, user group kind of thing inside the office. Yep. And I was thinking about it, and I was like, oh, do I want to do a talk about disaster state configuration? And I thought, I'm going to need more than one talk for that. And I think that's something that, you know, like in terms of a deep dive, it's, you know, like you can... Yeah. It's substantial. Like it's a substantial topic, and especially for people who don't understand infrastructure as code, that can even make it.
It's a long way to come.
Yeah, like the learning curve's like that.
Yeah,
like off the top of the screen. But the interesting thing was, I was like, oh, and I was talking to a couple of like colleagues in my group, and they're like, oh, what's this in your, you know, your code there? And basically, it's splatting. Yeah, you know, like all my code's pretty much just structured to be splatting. And I was like, oh, it's splatting. And he's like, sent him the link. He's like, oh, and I said, this is why you do it, you know, because you can essentially while splatting makes your code simpler, you can actually refactor your code to take advantage of the fact that you can manipulate hash tables. And he's like, oh, so yeah, the idea there was for us to So tomorrow's talk is going to be about splatting, but like, you know.
Oh, great talk. I remember when I did a talk about splatting, I forgot how to splat.
Yeah.
I didn't
it was so
understand
embarrassing.
Splatting until I had a use case for it. And then I'm like, oh my God, I literally tie, you know, this whole entire string that I had to scroll across the page for into a nice vertical list. Like, oh my God, now it makes sense. For me, that was it.
There's actually one thing I found out the other day about within C# is like how string builder works, the string builder class. And because strings are immutable, if you want to change a string, essentially what C# does under the hood is it will actually reallocate that memory within the heap memory. But string builder is different, and it's because it's basically represented as an object in it. But essentially the way that it works is it actually just carves up a big heap of memory in the heap stack, and then basically goes, all right, if you want to make changes, here you go. And it just, it's, I was like, so that's how they're kind of getting around the immutability kind of side of things, and that, making some tricky magic and things like that. Yeah.
I had a thought for a future meetup. Tell me, give me your thoughts on this one, Michael. So, seeing as we're still waiting for a few people are still trickling in, so I'll just mention this now. I thought maybe we could, and I actually plan to do this with Azure at some point, but I thought it might be a good idea to do one with PowerShell, and that is we get people to submit questions, and then like 2 weeks away from the talk or whatever, and then we get PowerShell experts like yourself and Jordan and everyone else who's a PowerShell expert. I
would consider myself a PowerShell expert. I'll just consider myself like some guy who knows how to Google really well.
Yeah. Well, I get a bunch of other people who can Google really well.
But isn't that
I get them all together. And then we get them to answer those questions.
Jordan's pretty much going to answer every question. Like he's the most.
But what do you reckon though? Like an asking anything for PowerShell
like an AMA kind of thing. Yeah. Like, and essentially I would target the wider audience. Like I wouldn't target just the user group. You know, you would target people in Azure and the wider community because and say just send us PowerShell questions and we'll get people to answer them live, basically. Yeah. And like if they send them in advance, they can make sure they come up with a really nice answer. Like they could ask them on the night, but if they ask them a couple of weeks in advance, and they could make sure they give like a good answer. Or you could actually get to that answer as well, so that, you know, if there's a pressing question or an issue that they need to, you know, troubleshoot, then it's something there. Yeah, that sounds all right. I think the one thing, this is something else that, you know, I think we've been hiring about this as well. And I think this is probably going to be more thrown out to, you know, the wider community within the DevOps space. And I think, you know, within Azure as well, is that really kind of doing a talk on PowerShell security. And this is kind of like a talk that is not focusing on, you know, the little, you know, itty bitty things. This is deep dive, best practices. This is how you set up your environment. This is how you go and talk to your SecOps guys. You know, these are the questions they're going to ask. These are the questions what you need to, you know, essentially not necessarily regurgitating it, but being able to actually be an expert and be able to, you know, answer those kinds of questions. Because I know that, like, you know, time and time again, PowerShell gets used as a launch platform. And I think that there's I think it's a very important area, especially for people to kind of understand and even just to the point to be able to architect it correctly within their environment. This is a really important thing because, you know, like with anything, you add security to something, and then next thing you know, everything just gets overly complex. And then, so it's just basically, you know, architecting that, whether that's, you know, using RBAC or ABAC, whatever, you know, doesn't matter. So
I'm trying to, give me 1 second. I'm going to share my screen, but I'm just trying to work out is there a way to keep teams on top of other windows? I don't think that is a thing, is it?
It will show you, but that's about it. I think you have to actually, you could drag it. Oh, you could drag the custom window in, but that's, I think, is about it. Like you wouldn't be able to. Yeah.
I'm going to lose sight of everyone, but that's all right.
Not a solution for today, but there is Power Tools, which is very good for Windows users for things like that.
Oh yes, I actually have that. But I didn't configure it for this. Fancy zones or whatever it's called. I have that. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of them is always on top in that bundle.
Damn it.
Yeah. Alrighty.
I might share my screen and then I might actually like.
Yeah, let's get started.
Try and check that.
I'll just do a quick spiel. So g'day everybody. Welcome to the Brisbane Infrastructure and DevOps User Group, BrisIndo. Welcome to February's meetup, and g'day to anyone who's new. Myself and Wayne here are kind of the facilitators. We do have other leaders.
Alex and Mitch,
Alex and Mitch. I don't like the word leader. I think just organizer,
facilitators.
Yeah, we just kind of drive the conversation, do things, and, you know, have different experts jump in there. A little bit about us. I am a PowerShell developer. I generally spend a lot of my time in PowerShell, teaching people about PowerShell. writing about PowerShell, writing PowerShell, writing books on PowerShell. That's pretty much that. Yeah, it's about.
But do you even PowerShell? That's the question.
Not much at the moment. It's
Yeah.
It's more at the moment I'm dealing with the politics of PowerShell, so I might write a memoir on that. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. Wayne, you want to tell a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm an Azure training architect at A Cloud Guru, a Pluralsight company. There's the official line. That's what I do. I teach people Azure every day.
And he's good at it.
A little bit of that. Cool.
Wayne's an excellent trainer, so we're actually in for a treat tonight.
We'll see how we go.
Yeah,
it hasn't got the quality people that I normally have at Pluralsight, and my technical writing team's looking over my work, so it might be a little unpolished. We'll see how we go.
All right. Anyway, welcome. We've been. Yes, we have two sponsors. Our first sponsor is ScriptRunner. So ScriptRunner is a complete PowerShell solution. If you are wanting to be able to run some PowerShell in your environment, you want to abstract away that PowerShell complexity to people who don't understand PowerShell. It has a variety of different tools. You have a variety of different permissions, and the list goes on. It's an amazing tool. I would highly recommend you guys to check it out. Huge thank you. So if you think PowerShell, think ScriptRunner. Our second one is Hudson. So Hudson have been there from the start. With our boy Pablo. Pablo has been an amazing person. I've known him personally for a very, very long time, probably since 2016, and we've been really, really good mates. And so when we approached him for the opportunity to present, for Hudson to present, to facilitate the user group meetups and sponsor that, they were very excited, and Pablo jumped on board and really got behind us. So huge thank you for Pablo and Hudson. They also, when we didn't have COVID, and hopefully when we, after Omicron settles down a little bit, they also provide a meetup location for us to be able to actually meet up and talk face to face. So huge thank you. Yeah. And huge thank you to Pablo. All right.
To the news.
I'll let you drive this, Wayne. Yep.
Sorry about the white slide. I much prefer dark background slides. I'm not sure why I left one white, but anyway, we've got a bright white slide here. Anyway, a little bit of PowerShell news. So and we've got a little bit to cover here because we took a break in December and a break in January. So back for February and catching up on a bit of news here. But PowerShell news, PS Readline 2.2 release candidate was announced over the break. Is anyone using PS Readline? I personally don't use it yet, but is anyone using it? Do they find it useful?
No. What's it useful? I mean, is it just reading in command line?
It's supposed to be for like predictive text, that's my understanding of it. Like predicting what you're going to type, so you don't have to type the command yourself. I don't know. I don't use it. Yeah. No PS Readline users out there?
Yeah, so PS Readline, I believe it's essentially just uses AI to kind of do a lot more prediction on it. I don't personally use, I probably do, but I just don't realize it. So that's when you know it's awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
When you're using it and you don't even realize it.
Yeah, they're the best type. And there's some Azure news. So Azure Bastion is getting a bunch of updates. If you're not using Azure Bastion and you're still using jump servers, question why? But Azure Bastion has added support for native clients, so you can use the remote desktop, Microsoft Remote Desktop to connect via Bastion now in preview, and file transfers are now supported via that native client as well, which is nice. AZ305, the Azure Architect or the Microsoft Certified Azure Solutions Architect Expert certification is now out of beta, so you can go ahead and sit the Azure Architect certification in just one exam, which is awesome. And the automatic deletion, I love this one because I've got this ridiculous loop in one of my PowerShell scripts that like cleans up a resource group, and it just like runs a delete until everything's gone. And this now you can just literally just delete everything associated with a virtual machine with one delete operation, which is awesome. I'm not sure if that's GA or if that's in preview, but it's coming soon anyway. And now for some AWS news, they've added general availability for AWS backup for Amazon S3, which is awesome. And they've announced elastic file system support replication, multi-region EFS replication has been announced as well, which is awesome. And they also, I didn't add one here, but there is also, if you haven't checked out AWS's FSX, I think that's how it's said, that blows my mind how good that is and how much capability they've got in that already. As an Azure person, it actually makes me a little bit jealous how good FSX is. But yeah, check that out if you get a chance. We have a community event coming up in the future. It was actually scheduled to be in March, but me as one of the organizers for it, I've got behind schedule, but we call it Hack with Hudson. And so basically Hudson sponsors us to get a bunch of people together, and then they take on a series of challenges. I know some of the attendees who are here tonight have done a Hack with Hudson in the past. We've done one of these before. And we're planning to do another one in the first half of 2022. And it'll be happening soon. This hands-on hackathon challenge focuses on GitOps using CI/CD and Azure DevOps or GitHub. So that's currently being produced now by myself and another person who's helping me out. And yeah, there's plenty of food and drinks. And you just need to bring your laptop along, and you can get involved in doing GitOps, which is an essential skill for any cloud or DevOps engineer. And if you're interested in getting involved or you just want to register your interest, you can contact Victor Burt, or Vic as we know him, at Hudson. Just reach out to him on LinkedIn and let him know you're interested in Hack with Hudson. And yeah, and he'll get you on the wait list. As always, we're looking for speakers. There's no shortage of people who are interested in learning about anything infrastructure or DevOps. But we do have a shortage of speakers. It's quite a common challenge for us, and it's actually a challenge for many user groups. We're not unique in this respect. So if you've got something that you think other people might find interesting, please reach out to myself, Michael, Mitch, or Alex, and we can get you on the list of people to speak.
And just to add a bit of a comment to that as well, is that it doesn't have to be specific to like a PowerShell. It can be any DevOps topic or any DevOps technology. We don't particularly, it's just, we just want to see something cool. You got something cool, you got something interesting that you're working on, that kind of thing. And yeah, I was going to also say, and that also applies to, if you, in that personal projects, if you've got, like a, written an infrastructure as code resource for, in a module or something like that within Ansible that automates your internet speed, something ridiculous. It doesn't matter. We don't really care as long as it it's very interesting, and you always are available. We always like to learn something new. So
yeah. Definitely. Yep. And it's good when you get a diverse group of people presenting, because you get ideas that you might not have previously had. If you get a small group of people always presenting, you simply get, you seem to get a very similar, like if it was me presenting every month, you get Azure. And if it was Michael presenting every month, you just get PowerShell. But if we get a diverse group of speakers, then you'll get more diverse and interesting content as well. So yeah, please put your hand up if you've got something you'd like to talk about. And it doesn't have to be super polished either. I must admit, I didn't spend a lot of time preparing for this particular talk tonight. So you don't have to invest a whole heap of time to prepare. And this is actually something that I wanted to learn myself in great detail. So it was a good opportunity to make sure I learned every part of what I'm going to speak about tonight.
And that's the other thing you've just recently touched on, which is really, really true. If you want to learn something, teach it. I cannot guarantee you enough. You personally, especially with writing the PowerShell textbook, the stuff that I've come out with and understanding, especially with quite in depth around the security of PowerShell, you don't understand that, just by kind of reading a few blogs and things like that. It's like I went into the source code to fully understand exactly how the product ticks under the hood.
Yeah.
And then from that, I understood this is how the product works. And then when people ask questions, you can confidently answer that, or essentially how to answer the question because based on X, Y, and Z from what you've seen personally. So
Yeah,
excellent,
and
excellent means.
definitely can agree with that. I'm preparing a course, recently, and I had to reteach DNS, and I went through it. And I'm like, yeah, I understand this, and then I went, oh, wait a minute. I've always assumed that is the case, but I'm just going to go and double check that. And then I double checked it, and it's just a particular way, the way DNS resolution works. And I went, I've never understood that. For 20 years, I haven't understood that. Until I had to go and teach it, I didn't understand exactly how that worked. So yeah, definitely a good opportunity to deep dive on something if you're really passionate about it. Yeah. Anyway, tonight's talk is about Azure Hybrid Technologies. I'm going to be focusing, and we'll talk about that in a moment, I'm going to be focusing on virtual machines in this instance, but there is a lot of investments being made by Microsoft in hybrid. Now, a lot of people originally thought that hybrid was like a stepping stone to cloud, or you're either on-prem or you're cloud. And that just is not the case. Like, people will end up in hybrid, or they'll end up in hybrid and multi-cloud, and they'll stay there. And they will stay there for potentially years to come. So it's good that Microsoft is seeing that now, and they're sort of giving people the opportunity to live in a hybrid situation or a hybrid and multi-cloud situation comfortably. And that's what tonight's talk is about. So we're first going to touch on one of Microsoft's big investment areas and let me know if you have any issues with me hearing, or I've got to zoom in or anything, just drop me a message. Or actually, just jump on the microphone and let me know.
With any questions that are put forward in chat, you can just throw your questions in chat. Anyone who's watching via Steam, via Twitch, feel free to throw your questions in chat and I'll relay them.
Awesome. Yeah, and feel free to just interrupt me whenever you get a chance, Michael, as well.
Yeah.
I actually prefer that because I feel like often questions in context are much better than after. Like it's much easier and much better to answer them at that point in time. Anyway, so one of the areas that Microsoft is investing very heavily in is Azure Arc. And let's talk a little bit about what Azure Arc is. So you've probably heard about Azure Arc by now. If you haven't, it's basically the opportunity to bring Azure out of the Microsoft cloud and into other clouds or onto on-premises. So we know that we have the Azure Resource Manager, and it's responsible for, it allows us to manage our Azure resources. It allows us to, deploy virtual machines and storage accounts and other things like that. And we can manage those resources in Azure using the Azure Resource Manager, using a range of tools, including, we've got JSON here, including infrastructure as code, we've got PowerShell, and we've got the Azure CLI. And Azure Resource Manager provides features like deployment, where you can use templates, PowerShell, the CLI, and item potency, allowing you to deploy something and then not have to redeploy it over and over again. It allows it to check it. And not redeploy if it exists in the state it needs to be in, and gives you all of those nice things in terms of deployment. And then the Azure Resource Manager also provides management. So it allows you to, it gives you the two key things for management, and they are inventory and visibility. And it allows you to manage your resources and integrate those resources with other Azure services like monitoring and backup, and security like Sentinel and things like that. And the other thing it obviously gives you, which I just mentioned, is security. It allows you, the Azure Resource Manager allows you to control access through role-based access control and use advanced security features like conditional access, just-in-time access, and one of my favorite Azure technologies, Azure Sentinel. And it also allows you to do governance. So you can control things through, you can sort of set up guardrails for your users and for your cloud deployment users to ensure that they only deploy things in a way that's supported in your organization or doesn't put you outside of compliance for whatever compliance purposes you need. And you can do things, you can do governance in Azure using things like Policy and Azure Defender. And then you have your on-premises resources. Now, You currently manage those resources with a completely different set of tools. Now, I mean, there might be some overlap here. We can see PowerShell on both sides of the screen here, but you may end up using, Microsoft Management Console, the old one. You might use Command Prompt. You might use Windows Admin Center. You might use PowerShell, or you might use SSH to manage your on-premise servers. And that's fine, but wouldn't it be nice if you could just manage them all together? And that's basically what Azure Arc does. It extends Azure Resource Manager out into on-premises and other clouds. And it allows you to manage those resources in the same way that you manage your Azure resources. And Microsoft is only just getting started with this. When I saw Arc get announced, I was like, this is the next big thing. And it's only gotten better since they've announced it. Now, I'm just showing virtual machines here, but Azure Arc actually supports a number of different things, including obviously Linux and Windows VMs, but it also supports containers with Azure Arc enabled Kubernetes. And Microsoft is now allowing you to deploy native Azure services like App Service and Functions and Logic apps using Azure Arc enabled Kubernetes on your on-premises environments. And at the moment in preview, it's actually free to try out. So if you want to try that out, you can. But it also allows you to manage data services like SQL and PostgreSQL using Azure Arc, using the Azure Resource Manager tools that you are used to when you're managing Azure. Now, this evening, I'm going to focus on virtual machines, but I just want you to be aware that there's a lot more to Azure Arc and there's a lot more coming. Microsoft continues to invest heavily in Azure Arc. Now, I've skipped that animation, but essentially it allows you to use a single set of tools to manage all of your resources. Now, to onboard a virtual machine or an on-premise server into Azure Arc, there's a few things that you need to have. And the first of those is, just going to wait for this to catch up. You need to have Windows Server or Azure Stack HCI, or hyperconverged infrastructure, or a Linux server of some flavor. And there's a whole bunch of Linux flavors that are supported. Microsoft supports quite a few. Now, if you haven't heard of Azure Arc HCI before, it's basically, I feel like it's going to replace Windows Server on premises. Don't quote me on that, but I feel like this is the future of Windows Server on-prem is Azure Stack HCI, especially for high availability deployments. And basically, Azure Stack HCI allows you to run Azure services on standard hardware. It's all certified by Microsoft, but it's regular servers, the same way you traditionally would have run virtualization. Now, if you're running Windows, if your server's running Windows, you need to have .NET 4.6 and Windows Management Framework 5.1. Basically, every Windows server since 2002, maybe 2012, has that.
Just to quickly clarify, for people who are not familiar with what WMF 5.1 is that's PowerShell 5.1. Yep, so, yeah, that applies. So anything prior to 2016 needs to have WMF 5.1. Yeah, you need to install it. And okay, and let me rephrase that. It's, yeah, you need to install it. We don't want to see any other versions out there because when you have older versions, things go pretty wonky pretty quickly.
Now, you also need to have a resource group to place your resources. So you have to go into Azure and you need to create a resource group in the Azure portal or using one of the tools available to place all of your Azure Arc resources. And then when it goes forward, and you need to be assigned a role, and there's a number of roles here, but Microsoft is getting better at designing Azure roles to suit their purposes. And they've created a new role for onboarding connected machines, they call them. And it's the Azure Connected Machine Onboarding role. And it literally allows people to register servers with Azure Arc and do nothing else. Now, they do need reader access if they want to actually generate a script to onboard it. But if you have people out in the field and they might not be savvy with Azure, you don't need to give them any additional permissions. They can literally just have this one role, and that allows them to onboard the server into Azure Arc. And then to edit machines, there's another role, and that's the Azure Connected Machine Resource Administrator, or you can just give them contributor on the resource group or the subscription if you want to go that high up. So that's the requirement for onboarding a server into Azure Arc. Just jump ahead. And then once you've onboarded your virtual machine into Azure Arc, you can start extending the functionality available to you in that virtual machine by installing extensions. And we're going to take a look at that tonight as well, because that's one of the great features of Azure Arc. All right, let's do an onboarding, and I'll just pause for any questions if there is any while I get cut across here. Jump over to the Azure portal. Does it look okay to everyone?
Yeah, that's fine, mate.
Okay, sweet. So firstly, we'll just scroll up. I swap between Mac and Windows, and maybe this is just me, but I always scroll in the wrong direction on Windows. So if you think I should be scrolling and I haven't scrolled, it's because I'm scrolling in the wrong direction. I don't know if that's just a Mac or Windows thing or that's just me, but anyway. So Azure Arc, Azure Arc has its own location in Azure, in the Azure portal. So I'll just navigate there. And then we're going to navigate, and you can see the functionality that Microsoft is adding here. There's quite a lot here. You know, some's in preview, like there's quite lots in preview, isn't it? But like you can see API management, app services, event grid, functions, logic apps. Like this is growing at a rapid rate. And look how many of those are in preview as well. Tonight, we're going to focus on servers. And I think the reason I'm focusing on this is because it's one of the more mature Azure Arc offerings. And I think our audience, it suits our audience. And we'll just quickly have a look at Kubernetes just when we wrap up. But there's not much to show there. So you navigate to servers. And then it's as simple as selecting add. And I have one server already onboarded here, and it's running in the Wayne's Place data center. And we'll just go add here. Now,
seems to be a pretty HA data center.
Yeah, it's top notch. Tier 1, I think.
Tier 0.
And yeah, and you can generate a script, and that's what we're going to do tonight. You can generate a script to onboard a single server. But you can also add multiple servers by using a service principal. So service principals in Azure, if you're not familiar, they allow you to authenticate as basically an application in Azure Active Directory. And you can authenticate with a certificate or a password, like a passphrase. So that allows you to onboard multiple servers at the same time. And you could create a service principal and give it just the Azure Connected Machine onboarding role. And that service principal wouldn't be able to do any damage to your Azure infrastructure. It could only onboard machines. So if the certificate leaked out or the password got out into the wrong hands, it couldn't do any damage to your Azure subscriptions. And then they're also adding the ability to onboard servers through update management in Azure Automation. So if you're already using that, you can bring your servers into Azure Arc using that, and that's in preview. And then obviously adding servers through Azure Migrate is another way. But for our purposes tonight, we're just going to add a single server. So we'll click Generate Script. They couldn't really have made this any easier, to be honest. And then we'll just click Next through here. And then we'll just select the region and then the operating system. And you can see here that, and this is another awesome piece of functionality, is that you can hit the public endpoint for Azure Arc, or you can actually, if you have a private connection between like a VPN or ExpressRoute, between your on-premises network and your Azure network, then private endpoints are coming. So you can keep the traffic from Azure Arc. It's encrypted anyway, like it's all over SSL, TLS, /TLS. But private endpoints are making it even more secure. And it obviously supports proxy servers if you have one of those. So for our purposes, we're just going to go public endpoint. And then we're just going to select the resource group. Now I've already pre-created a resource group just to skip, so you don't have to sit through me creating a resource group. And then everything else is fine here. I must have skipped past that initially. And then we'll just go next. Now here, this is one of the advantages of Azure Arc, is that you can add tags to your on-prem servers. Now, like that, you can do that in VMware, like, or you can probably do that in Hyper-V. I haven't tried, but what's good about that is that all your tags for all your virtual machines or servers are in one place. You might need to go on mute just for a second, Michael. And if that is your microphone, it could be someone else's. The tags allow you to better organize your resources. So I'm going to go ahead and say where this one is. So this, this virtual machine is running in Wayne's Place data center, which is in Brisbane, happens to be in Queensland, and then is obviously in Australia. And then, but what is also good is I could also assign a cost center to this on-prem virtual machine. And I could say that IT is obviously responsible for that, for paying for that virtual machine. And you can think where that would be handy, because previously you couldn't, like you could charge back for virtual machines on premises, but it was kind of clunky. But now you can charge back for on-prem virtual machines and Azure virtual machines or Azure resources all in the same place. So it starts to make a little bit of sense from that perspective. We'll just jump ahead and go next here. And they basically just give you a PowerShell script that will go and download the Azure Arc agent and install it on your virtual machine. So we'll just go copy here. Sorry about the zoom. It's a little bit hard to like see because of the zoom, but they give you a PowerShell script and you can download it if you want to, but I'm just going to copy it and I'll jump over to my virtual machine. Here's one I prepared earlier. Now I'm going to use, I don't know if anyone else gets this, but I'm going to use the ISE only because when I paste into Hyper-V these days, when I use the clipboard redirection and paste into a Hyper-V virtual machine, it pastes it in reverse, but only when I paste it into PowerShell. So I can't explain that, so I'm just going to use the ISE. Forgive me. All right, so then it's basically going to download and install the Azure Arc agent. So we'll go ahead and run this. Now you're probably thinking, how is it going to authenticate me? Like, I haven't given it any permission. I might be reading the script going, I know exactly how it's going to authenticate you. I can see the text. Let's give it a second. Probably should have given this virtual machine some extra grunt. All right, and basically what you need to do is it's going to use my authentication to connect. It's going to use my permissions to connect this virtual machine. So instead of using a service principal in Azure Active Directory, it's going to use my permissions to onboard this virtual machine. So I have to basically go to this URL, and you can do this on any computer. So I'm not going to do it on this virtual machine. I'll do it outside. I'll do this back in the Azure portal. So I'll hit start there, but I don't want to do that. Go start here. Get back to the Azure portal. Go there, and then we'll switch back to the virtual machine again and grab that code that it gave me there. Copy that. Bear with me while I hit the wrong button a few times. Jump back to the Azure, and then enter that code. It's asking, are you trying to onboard an Azure Arc virtual machine? Yes, I am. Sign in there. Gave away my email address. Thanks for the spam. And then continue. All right, so that's now successfully authenticated. So we'll just jump back to the virtual machine. It's probably already continued, but it hasn't yet. Shouldn't be too long. There we go. All right, and it actually gives you, like, it couldn't be any easier. They even give you the URL to go to view your connected, your Azure onboarded virtual machine. So we'll just navigate back to I keep hitting the start button in the virtual machine. We'll just go back to the Azure portal, and then we'll just go back to Azure Arc, and then we'll just hit refresh. And it's as simple as that. We've successfully onboarded our first Azure Arc virtual machine, and you can see that it's tagged and everything else. I'll press on. Feel free to chime in with any questions if there are any. Now this is where the power really starts to come in. In this demo, I'm going to install Azure Virtual Machine Extensions in that on-premises virtual machine. If you've worked with Azure for a little while now, you're now thinking, okay, this is pretty cool. Like, okay, there's Azure extensions available that would be handy to install on an on-premise virtual machine. Let's go back to our server and we will go ahead and install some extensions. So we'll navigate into our server. And then we'll navigate to extensions. And then we'll navigate and click add. Telling us what extensions are, like we're just using Azure for the first time, which is pretty funny. Now you can see there isn't a lot here at the moment. And this is what I mean by Microsoft is constantly building this. When I first checked, I don't even know if there was anything in here. But now we've got a few to choose from, and this will continue to build, and eventually you'll get a whole range of extensions that you can install on your virtual machine. And I think actually when I prepared this demo, I don't even think this was here. I think it was just these two. So I think this has been added fairly recently. Anyways, that could be my memory being wrong. So we're going to go ahead and install the Log Analytics agent. And if anyone's installed the Log Analytics agent outside of Azure Arc, they know how painful it can be. It's not the easiest thing to install. It's kind of painful. You've got to enter in a bunch of stuff. Probably have to enter in a little bit of it here anyway, but we'll go and do this. At least we don't have to do it on the virtual machine. We'll go ahead and select Create. Now we need to go and collect some information from our Log Analytics workspace. So we'll just jump back. I'll open the Azure portal in another tab here, and we're going to grab the workspace ID and workspace key. And that is in, if I just get that thing out of my way, there we go, Log Analytics workspaces. And we'll just go into this Log Analytics workspace that I've created. And then under settings, we're going to navigate to agents management. I always get these two confused for some reason. Oh, and it's blacked out my workspace ID, but that's fine. I've got AZ Mask running, which blacks out any confidential information. Forgot to do my email address. Thank you, AZ Mask. But anyway, workspace ID, and then didn't block it out on the other window either. And then we'll do the primary key. Oh, it's doing a top job tonight. All right, we'll go ahead and click next. And then we can create. And it's as simple as that, deploying the extensions to your on-prem virtual machines to allow you to, what this will allow us to do is pull in logs from that on-prem virtual machine into our Log Analytics workspace. And you'll see why this is important really soon. So we're going to navigate back to the Log Analytics workspace in a moment. I'll just wait for this to finish. Should only take a moment. Any questions from anyone at the moment? How are we looking, Michael? Michael's gone to sleep. How are we looking, everyone else?
I double muted myself.
Oh, good.
So we've got one question from BW. Is this different from Copilot?
I'm trying to think. M365 is not my forte, so I'm trying to think what Copilot is. Might have to clarify there.
And then I have a comment from Peter saying, I was thinking that Azure Arc would make Azure Stack less attractive.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah, I think.
I agree.
Yeah, I think Microsoft is like doing a fine line here. I don't know if you noticed, but they recently announced hot patch support for Windows Server 2022 Azure Edition. Now, Microsoft only lets you run that version of Windows Server on Azure or on Azure Stack HCI, or potentially on Azure Stack as well. I'm not sure about that last one, but I'm sure it is supported. But you can't run it on VMware or Hyper-V or on bare metal. So you can only get that support if you're running it on one of the Azure platforms. Now, is there anything technically different about Azure Stack HCI versus Windows Server running Hyper-V that would not make that work? I actually posed the question to one of the cloud advocates on LinkedIn. I haven't had an answer. I'm sure I know the answer anyway. So I think Microsoft is, there's a fine line here. They're treading very carefully.
Yeah, BW just responded. He just said the question was in relation to the PS read line in the new section. So that was fair enough. No questions in our stream chat. So if you've got any questions in stream, please throw them through. Thank you.
I'm just going to wait a moment for this to deploy, and then we'll jump back to the Log Analytics workspace and continue over there. Now you're probably thinking, okay, I can onboard a server into the Log Analytics workspace and send the logs up to that Azure monitor. Like that's the most basic thing you've ever seen in your life. But you'll see where it's more powerful a little bit later on in this demo. Wait for this to do its thing. It's taking I should have given that VM much more grunt, like all the CPUs and all the memory.
Do you have a resourcing issue in Wayne's Tier 0 data center?
I might actually, yeah. Might have reached capacity. I don't know if anyone else has ever had that happen to them on Azure, but has anyone ever gone to deploy something on Azure and like Microsoft has thrown back the message, there's no capacity. No one's ever had that? I have. And it freaks you out because you're like, this is the cloud. We're not supposed to run out. I don't even know what to do right now. Let's going ahead and installing. Let's see if I can skip ahead while that does its thing. Yeah, I don't think we can just yet. We need to go in here, but we can't do it just yet. Oh, it's actually saying 2 Windows computers are connected. I wonder if it is actually connected and it's just taking its time here. I might go back, go to Azure Arc. We'll go back into servers, go into the demo server, go into extensions. Yeah, okay, so it's totally finished deploying. Thank you, Azure Portal. All right, so we've got 2, this would have been 1 previously. We've now got 2 connected to this log analytics workspace. Now we're going to go ahead and configure log collection from this virtual machine. So we're going to go into agent configuration in the log analytics workspace. I'm just going to collapse this here. And then we'll go ahead and collect some Windows logs. So we'll just go add Windows event log. And I'm hoping I can type in system here to collect the system log when I spell it correctly. Yep, let's grab the system log. We'll grab everything. And then you can obviously specify what you want to grab. And then we'll also grab the application log. Well, and that should be it, I think. We'll also grab some performance counters because why not? Actually, I don't need to save there yet. I can apply when I'm done. Add performance. Actually, there's normally I think it's because I'm zoomed in so far. There's normally an add recommended performance counters option here, but I'm not seeing it. So I'm just going to go ahead and add the event logs. I don't actually need the performance counters, but we could add those and monitor the performance of this virtual machine from Azure if we wanted to. So I'll just go ahead and hit apply here. And now it's going to automatically go and start collecting the application and system logs from that VM and bringing it into the log analytics workspace so that we can query those logs. Let's move on. Now, in this demo, I'm going to show you one of the other capabilities that you get with Azure Arc. And this is actually one of my favorite capabilities of Azure Arc. The next one is also great. So what's important to know about every Azure Arc enabled virtual machine or server is that they actually get an identity in Azure. So like an Azure virtual machine has an identity in Azure, the on-prem virtual machines get one as well, like an Azure Resource ID. And that also means that they can now access managed identities. Now, if you're not sure what a managed identity is, it basically means that you can access resources as the virtual machine's identity. So the virtual machine can be provided access to access resources. So instead of using your identity, it's using the virtual machine's identity. Now, let's go ahead and do a demo of this. So I'm just going to jump back to the Azure portal. When I can bring that up. And we're going to navigate into Key Vault. So I'll just go home here. And we'll navigate into Key Vault. I thought I might have it here. I do. There we go. And we've got a Key Vault created already. So I'll just use that one. Now, I just want to show you something that's happened fairly recently in Key Vaults that's important to know. If I go to access policies, you used to have to use access policies, or Vault access policies, to configure access to Key Vault. But now you can actually use Azure role-based access control, which is much more granular and much more secure because the Vault access policies were a little bit cumbersome. Like they were actually annoying. So I'm glad that Azure role-based access control is now a thing. And it's recommended that you use Azure role-based access control moving forward. And this also means that because our server, our Azure Arc enabled server, has an identity in Azure now, we can now grant it access to access this Key Vault. This on-prem server can now access Key Vault. And that's without storing any secrets. There's no secrets in clear text or anything like that stored. It'll just use its identity and that secure connection for the Azure Connected Machine agent to potentially grab secrets from Key Vault. So we'll just navigate to IAM and we'll go role assignments here. We'll just see. So I have we can go ahead and delete this. This is just me testing, so I'll go ahead and remove that one. So I currently have access as a Key Vault Secrets Officer, so that means that I can see secrets in here. Now let's go ahead and give the virtual machine. Actually, no, I've already got access, so we'll leave that. And we're going to go and we're going to go ahead and add the virtual machine. I'm just getting confused here because I was already here and I expected to have to add myself as well, but I've already got access. So I'm going to go ahead and add the virtual machine. So add a role assignment. And then we're going to give them Key Vault Secrets Officer. Secrets Officer. And then we'll go next. So that gives them any access to secrets in the Key Vault. We'll go ahead and go next. And then, so you can see here, we're going to use instead of using a user group or service principal, we're going to go ahead and use a managed identity. We'll go select members. And then we'll go ahead and use a system assigned managed identity. Oh, actually, we've got Azure Arc servers here, so that's even better. And we'll use our Arc demo server. And then we'll go select. And then we're ready to review and assign. There we are. So we've now granted that Azure Arc connected machine access to read, write, update secrets in this Key Vault. Now let's go ahead and create a secret. So we'll go navigate into secrets, and then we'll go generate. And we're just going to create a manual secret, and we'll just call this secret 1. So this could be any secure value that you need to store, any password or anything like that. And we'll just give this a value. Anyone want to guess what I typed in there? No, don't bother. Create a secret, yep, and then we'll go ahead. This is all done, so we're not going to set an activation date or expiry date, and we're going to make sure it's enabled, so it's good to go. All right, so we can go ahead and create that. All right, we've now got a secret in here. Now we're going to use that virtual machine to access that secret. Now, one thing to be aware of with the managed identity is that there's a service on. I'll actually go back and show you this. We'll go back to the virtual machine, and I go into services. I'll just expand this out. There should be a Azure Hybrid Instance. I actually selected it by accident. How good is that? Azure Hybrid Instance Metadata Service. So this is the Azure Arc Connected Machine service running on Windows, and this publishes an environmental variable called Identity Endpoint, or env. You know, in PowerShell it's env and then Identity _ endpoint, but that's a system variable, so I just need to do a reboot of this server, and then this service will go ahead and add that environment variable. So I'm just going to go ahead and restart this, and then we'll come back once this is restarted. And one thing that Microsoft, I don't know why they did this, but they made that service for the Azure Hybrid Instance Metadata Service. They made that delayed start. Not sure why, but they did. Oh, I'll get my password right. Just go back to full screen. All right. Let's go and make sure that service has restarted. Oh. Go here. Azure Hybrid. Okay. Oh yeah. Automatic delayed start. So this throws you off when you're trying to learn this, because you're like, why can't I access the environmental variable yet? Well, the service is not started. Okay. If you're too quick, that'll happen. All right. Now let's try and retrieve the secret. I've got a script here, so I'm just going to copy this. If it'll let me. Is it going to let me select this script? No, it won't. I'm just going to exit the presentation for a second and copy this script. It's quite a bit to it, but I'll talk you through the script. So I'll just copy this out here. Copy this. Use everyone's favorite PowerShell tool again. We'll use the ISE. We'll just paste in this script here. Now, I'll talk you through this. So if anyone's thinking, wait a minute, can't anyone who logs onto this server then just authenticate as this server and then access everything that we've granted this server access to, including things like the key vault? Microsoft has thought of that, and the way it works, the way the managed identity works is it actually, when you try and authenticate using the managed identity, it actually saves a file to a directory called, and I'll just copy this directory out, to this location. And then you have to go and grab your token from that location when you authenticate. And the reason it does this is because that allows them to verify that you are someone who is privileged on this server. You're not just any random, generic user logging onto this server. And if we go to the security tab here, and I'll just wait for this to load, because this SID here. So we can see here, administrators can read it, obviously. They can do everything with this. But also there's a hybrid agent extension applications group that's been created on this server. So you could go ahead and have an application on this server that you want to give access to Key Vault or some other Azure resource using the managed identity, and you can just add that application or whatever identity that application runs as into this group, and then it can read this directory and then authenticate as the machine. So that's the purpose of this directory here. So that's what these first few lines are actually up here are going to do. So it's going to go ahead and get the access token to access Key Vault. Is that text okay? Should I zoom this in a little bit? Zoom in just a little bit. Go one more time. I don't know if that's any easier to read or not. That's probably horrible because it's white, but anyway. I can share this with anyone who wants it. It's basically a reworked version of what's available on Microsoft Docs. And I don't know if anyone else feels like this, but when I go to Microsoft Docs and I see a script, I just have to rewrite it. I don't like how they come directly out of Microsoft Docs. I don't know if that's just me. All right, so we retrieve the access token, and then we can go and use that secret file to get the bearer token from the managed identity endpoint. So we'll go ahead and do that. And there's our access token that it's collected. I actually could have kept that directory open. Unfortunately, I closed it, but it does actually write a file to there, and it cleans that file up as well automatically. So you're not left with some token sitting in that directory that's unnecessary. And now we can go ahead and connect to our Key Vault using invoke REST method and go ahead and grab that secret using the bearer token. We'll go ahead and run this few lines here. Remote name could not be resolved. Let's make sure that I've got the correct Key Vault name there. Go back. I think it's a different name, isn't it? It is. Copy this. Well, it's tripping me out because it had like the taskbar from the virtual machine. Anyway, I will go ahead and replace this here. And I just want to make sure that when I authenticated, I didn't actually specify that. I didn't know, specified that, so that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. I didn't have that name higher up, so the authentication is not invalid. So we'll go ahead and try this again. And now, obviously, this computer is able to retrieve a secret from Key Vault using its managed identity, and that's that here, that secret value, without having to store any secrets, which is awesome. I hate storing secrets on servers, on-premise servers, and this obviously gets around that by giving it a managed identity. Now, I want to show you one more. Any questions?
That's really cool. Yeah, good. BW's he's had to jump into another meeting.
I can't hear Michael. That's weird.
Oh,
That's probably just my microphone.
Yeah. Can you hear me now? Hello. Can anyone else hear me? Am I just talking to myself?
No, you're not talking to yourself. Sorry, Michael. My headphones are turned off.
Oh. Okay.
I'm back. Any questions?
Yeah. So BW had to jump off, but no questions. So yeah,
okay,
but
cool.
That's really cool. That's really cool.
I love that feature.
Yeah, it's so cool.
And everyone thinks like, oh, whatever, just gets an identity in Azure. It's not until you dive into it, you're like, oh, wait a minute, now I'm seeing the possibilities.
No, that's exactly right. Like once you have you actually have an identity to do specific things in Azure. Like that's huge.
Yeah. Now, all right, we'll jump back, and I want to do one more demo here. I'll just try and slideshow from here. Oh, from beginning? No, not from that. I hit the wrong button. Sorry. Okay, from current slide. There we go. Learning how to PowerPoint. So now, one thing about Log Analytics workspaces is, this is hilarious, what people used to do to get around limitations in Azure, was people would actually send their logs to multiple Log Analytics workspaces so that it's a common practice. I'll go back one step, actually. It's a common practice when you're in a large organization to delegate the access of managing someone's cloud resources to a team. So you might have application team A, and that application team A is completely responsible for their workload. They're responsible for backing it up, monitoring it, deploying it, updating it, everything. The problem with that is that all your logs go back to one Log Analytics workspace, typically by design, or they might do a regional Log Analytics workspace, like one in each geography. Problem with that is that they can see logs from everyone else's workloads, including all of the security and audit logs from Active Directory. And this obviously becomes, or Active Directory and a number of other security products that are logging their logs to Azure Monitor or Log Analytics workspace. And this is a problem because we don't want them to see that. We only want them to see their logs. And so Microsoft fixed this problem. And they allow you to now grant access to a Log Analytics workspace or view logs in a Log Analytics workspace based on the resources that you have access to in Azure. So if you have, read access to a virtual machine, then you get read access to the logs for that virtual machine. And this is called in the Azure, in the Log Analytics workspace, this is referred to as resource-based access. I'm going to go ahead and show you this in the Azure portal. Just jump here. And then we'll go into our Log Analytics workspace. As far as I'm concerned, this is the only way to have a Log Analytics workspace set up, because the way they got around it in the past, people got around this in the past, was they just deploy a Log Analytics workspace just for that workload team, and they'd also send the logs to that Log Analytics workspace. They just have two destinations, one to the central logs for the entire governance and security team, and then another Log Analytics workspace for that workload team, and then another one for the other workload team. And then you end up with 50 or 100 Log Analytics workspaces, and that quickly becomes unmanageable and expensive because you're storing the logs twice. So if I go and navigate under General, I'll just scroll up here. Where am I going here? General, and then if we navigate into Properties, and then Access Control Mode, use Resource or Workspace Permissions. So the way this is working at the moment is you can either grant access to the Log Analytics workspace, and this would be for your central cloud governance team. You grant them full access to the Log Analytics workspace. Or you can grant them access to the resources, like read on a virtual machine, and then that would give them access to only the logs for that virtual machine. So at the moment, this is using both of those methods, and you can click this to switch back to just workspace permissions, which is the old way. So I think this is the default way when you create a Log Analytics. Oh, I clicked it. Hilarious. Click change. Okay, we're back. At least that changes quickly, right? So like 3 days, and I'd have to wait for it to fix it. So yeah, so that's set up correctly, and I think by default they go like that now. So let's go ahead as me and go ahead and I've got to exit out of the thing again. Can't copy from PowerPoint. I just want to run a KQL query. And I don't know about everyone else. KQL is how you query logs and metrics in the Log Analytics workspace or Azure Monitor. So let's go ahead and we'll run a query. And I always forget how to use KQL every time I don't use it very often, and I always got to relearn it.
There is a cheat sheet for people who actually kind of come from that DBA side. There is cheat sheets available where it kind of shows you this is how you write a SQL query, this is how you write a KQL query. And yeah, KQL is hell powerful. Like it's one of the, it's one of those languages that, like you said, you got to kind of relearn it, but the things that you can write within it, and obviously if you're collecting everything within log analytics. The query, the query is the performance and just the scope of the language is quite, it's
and it becomes
phenomenal.
very powerful. Like it's very easy to then not consolidate, but like find relationships between logs. You know, like user A logged on to this virtual machine, then they logged onto this virtual machine, then they created a user on the other one, then they, you know, changed a group using the other one. It makes it easier to track those events and link them together. And that's why, you know, storing all of your logs in a log analytics workspace and being able to query them using this powerful tool like KQL really has its advantages. I'll just paste here. Sorry to cut you off, Michael. I think I had an idea of what you were trying to say. Just jumped in. All right, so we're going to query from the event table, which is this table here. And then we're going to find everything that was generated in the last 30 days. And then we're just going to see how many events I pull back using my permissions. So we'll run this here. All right, and you can see I've got access to Arc Demo Server 1, and it's got 260 events. And then I've got a couple of other machines that have obviously written logs to this log analytic workspace, and I can see all of their events as well. So all I'm trying to show you here is that I can see 3 virtual machines using my account. Now let's go ahead, and I've just got to bring up the presentation again one more time. Now I've got another user account that I've created called Scoped User, and I'm going to grant it reader access to that Azure Arc VM. So we'll just go back over to here. Actually, we don't even need to. We can go here. So back into Azure Arc and into our demo server, and we're going to navigate into IAM. And then we're going to do a role assignment. We'll go add here, add a role assignment. And then we're going to give them reader access, and we'll just go next here. I always get confused as to when I have to add the members. And then we're going to add my scoped user. So my user who only has access to this one VM. So we'll go ahead and add them. We'll do a search here, scope user. And then we'll go ahead and grant them reader access to this Azure Arc virtual machine. Review and assign. Give it a second to do that. Yeah. Oh yeah, I've got my phone here because I'm like, oh, how am I going to do multi-factor? I don't have my mobile, but I'll do it. It's there. Okay, we're good. Now let's go ahead and log on as, we'll just go ahead and do a new private window, and we'll go and log on as this scope user. Log on. Yeah, do I know the password? Let me see. I actually expected this to just do like passwordless access, but it didn't work. So let's just see if I know the password. Oh, it turns out I do. It's going to do multi-factor. Just give me a second. Yeah, well, why not? Let's stay signed in. It's not going to matter anyway. Okay. All right. Now we're logged in as that user. We'll navigate into Azure Arc, and we'll navigate into servers, and we'll just see what we've got here. All right. So they can't even see the resource. They've got access to that. If they navigated directly to that Azure Arc virtual machine, they would be able to see that here. Let's go ahead and now navigate over to. I want to make sure I haven't done anything else here. No, we're going to navigate over to home, and we'll navigate to the log analytics workspace. Let me see what I'm doing wrong here. Just give me 1 second. Oh, yes, I always do this wrong. I always think you have to go to the log analytics workspace to see it, but of course they don't have access to that. So I do need to go into Azure Arc, and they should be able to see the virtual machine here. Okay, they can. I was just too quick. Now they can see the virtual machine and only that virtual machine because I've granted them read access to just that virtual machine. And then we're going to select logs here under monitoring. We'll close out this welcome screen. We can close out these pre-baked queries, and then we'll go ahead and run our query that we ran last time as this scoped user. We'll go ahead and run that. And we can see that they only have access to the resource that they have read access to. So they're not seeing all the logs in the entire log analytics workspace. And why this is important is why I mentioned before. Typically, what you want to do in an organization is set up what Microsoft calls, and I love this term, is a cloud center for excellence. And this is a team of people who make sure that people are deploying resources to Azure that are secure, they're reliable, and they're backed up and they're monitored and all those sorts of things. Everything's done properly. This Cloud Center for Excellence team does that. And what they can do, and what this enables them to do, is allow teams to monitor their own workloads. And the management can be largely left to those teams once you give them access to the logs and the performance data. Do we have any questions on that one?
So we don't have any questions on that. I've just been answering a question from Gearfuse with regards to a link to the Teams meeting.
Okay.
Which that's interesting. Which we won't be publicly sharing tonight, just due to the inappropriate use. So, that's I think but nothing else there. BW had to jump off.
Okay.
That's really cool.
All right. No problem. Let's talk the final. Oh, what is this doing? Give me a second here. It showed all of my good stuff from my slide straight away from the current slide. Well, apparently it's going to show us everything anyway. Let's do it. So Azure Arc pricing, and this actually shocks me. So free, you get resource inventory, organization tags, you get that role-based access control, you get template-based deployment, you get extensions, and you get update management. That's all free. And as far as I'm concerned, they're the core features, and there's a lot of good stuff in there. Now, if you pay for Azure Arc per server for $8.50 Australian, you get Azure policy support that allows you to configure the guest operating system as well. So configure the actual policies on the server, but also guest configuration to do things like full configuration, install applications and configure Windows or Linux or whatever operating system you might have. And with that, you also get change tracking and inventory. And when it comes to supporting workloads, change tracking and inventory is essential. Before you can actually fix something, you need to know what's going on. And that's where change tracking and inventory is essential. It'll tell you when a service changed, when a registry key changed, when a process started, when a process stopped, when someone logged on, when someone logged off, everything you possibly would want to know about a server, change tracking and inventory will give you. Someone installed an application, like it's extremely powerful. Anyway, if you've got this turned on, someone wouldn't want to log on to your server without first doing their change request. Let's just say that. And then if you pay a lot more, and this actually shocks me how expensive this Microsoft, I don't know what Microsoft is thinking with this pricing, but maybe they'll adjust it at some point. But for $20 Australian per month per server, you get Microsoft Defender as well. Now, this is just my personal opinion, I almost think this is irresponsible on Microsoft's part. Because with cybersecurity being such an important, such a major problem these days, I'm surprised that they make it so expensive to properly secure your servers. Like this pricing is actually crazy. I feel like, the $8.50 part should be like free. And then the $8.50 should be the Microsoft Defender. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that one as well, Michael.
Yeah, I'm pretty much on the fence with that as well. I think that I can understand the business model, but at the same time, like you said, I think that
there's a corporate responsibility.
Defender, I think also Defender gets a bad rep. But that being said, people don't understand what Defender is like today, and that's because it's hidden behind the scenes. The features and the ability, the security and the ability, just even the auditability, the ability to audit content within Defender today is in everything that you want as a sysadmin. Like it's incredible. And what I mean incredible, like I've been harping on this about for quite some time, but a good example is a custo query was written in an environment with over 10,000 computers that basically identified who clicked on an Outlook attachment. So this is not just who received an Outlook email. It's who clicked on a specific attachment within an email, highlight those machines and those machines that had that process run. So that's powerful. That's powerful. And I think that's the thing is that, like, and modern antivirus just can't compete with that kind of thing. So under the hood, it's a little steep, but what you get for Defender is essentially it's like God mode. I would say it's God mode, but it's like getting an aimbot for a game, and you can just kind of run around and just kill everything, and it's probably the best way to describe it.
It really is it's a supremely powerful tool.
It's a very powerful tool, and it's so underutilized. And I think that and that's what I think that it's really just comes down to the business model. I think that there should be, personally, my opinion, especially because we've kind of had quite a detailed discussion about this, and I'm currently trying to look at desired state configuration and looking at pricing around that, and obviously Azure guest policy, Azure policy and guest configuration. It really starts to make a difficult business decision to say, is it worth $8.50 a month? Yeah. And that's really the question.
And it takes a while to prove your value. Like, you can easily prove value with change tracking and inventory, but it's going to happen, 2 years from now, when someone logs onto a production server and installs some application that it's supposed to, or something like that.
Yeah. And that's exactly right. Like and this is something that essentially is, what do you place value in? Like, how as a business do you value this product? And I think that's what it really comes down to. I've got a couple of questions that's just come through. Is that the same for? So one of the streamers on my stream, had a user ask, I wonder if that is the same for education pricing.
Wouldn't be. No, this is retail pricing. So there may be a number of different pricing options you can get.
You might be able to get a discount with that. So it's definitely worth. The thing is that this is only for Azure Arc. This is specifically for your server implementation. So if you're going with a desktop implementation, you'd be looking at 365.
That's right. You're probably already licensed.
That's exactly right. You'd be licensed for that.
E3 or E5, depending on. You'll have a different level for E5.
I've got another question from Ashley. He says, can you please explain with a template-based, what a template-based deployment is and what it can contain? Also, what is guest configuration in this context? Is it writing your own PowerShell DSC scripts and running them on the VM?
Great double-barreled question, and I can answer both of those, luckily. So template-based deployment basically means that eventually you're going to be able to deploy those extensions and other configurations for that virtual machine using templates. So you still have to do the onboarding manually. And there'll be other ways to onboard, as you will have seen through, bulk onboarding through service principals or onboarding through Azure Update Management. But you'll be able to eventually use ARM templates and Bicep to deploy extensions to on-prem virtual machines. That's essentially what that is. And do other configurations for on-prem virtual machines, like add tags and stuff like that. And the second part of that question about guest configuration, it's basically the latest generation of desired state configuration. The problem with it is it's not ready. It's not fully baked. It's like half baked.
So, and I think with correct me if I'm wrong, Wayne, with the with policy and guest configuration is generally templated to specific applications. So it's essentially within DSC you've got resource-based configurations, and then you have not resource-based configurations. You have machine-based configurations, then you have configuration-based. Oh, is it configuration-based? But essentially, you're able to apply multiple different pieces of.
That's right.
Yeah, and so. It kind of comes down to the architecture and design. But within the guest policy configuration, essentially the idea is that, you would have desired state configuration that would apply to a specific configuration. So whether that's, we need AEST to be deployed on this machine. So there would be a specific piece of configuration for that. And then you would apply a piece of configuration over the top for that to go say, let's go and deploy this web service package, latest version.
The challenge with all of those things that you're currently saying is that sounds great, but there's no dependencies.
Yeah. Oh, there is a resource. There is a resource that allows you to do it.
There is. Okay.
Yeah, there is a
Alright,
resource in DSC that allows you to, but to write dependencies on other resources.
But wait for is not supported, and you can't do depends on.
There you go. There's your answer right there. Like I know that I know that there is a resource which is waits on, but then I'm like, well, if it doesn't work, then yeah, and depends on doesn't work.
No,
so
you can't like wait for the domain and then run DSC to join the domain. No, that doesn't work. So that's what I mean by half baked. But it will get there. It will definitely get there.
The other thing which I was going to say is that, and this is something while you're having a quick chat about the onboarding process for Azure Arc machines. So if you're basically running this on machines initially on-prem, and you already have a DSC implementation or infrastructure set up, whether that's on-prem pool services or using Azure Automation, there are resource modules available. So it's kind of one of those catch-22s. You've already got Log Analytics agent already installed, but if you don't, you've got, and you have a DSC pool service, there is resources available for you to be able to actually, automate that deployment process. Or you could just go, the old-fashioned way and just use a bit of PS remoting and flood it out that way. So that's another option. Just make sure that it's configured properly.
Quickly talk about the future. And the future really is Azure Arc Kubernetes. This is where they're going to allow you to deploy Azure workloads to Kubernetes deployments that you're running anywhere. That's in Google Cloud, that's in AWS, that's on-prem, that's the Kubernetes that I'm running on my personal PC. Let me just quickly show you that. I'll go back to Azure Arc, discard this, and Kubernetes clusters. Why is this not showing anything? Because I'm logged on as a scope user. Switch over.
Power demo.
Yeah. Go back to Azure Arc again and Kubernetes clusters to someone who actually has access. Yeah, and there is an Azure Arc enabled Kubernetes cluster that will eventually allow me to deploy all of these wonderful things. So that's the future. That's all I had for tonight.
I'd like to see automation fall into that, to be honest.
So automation. So there's a version 2 of the hybrid worker agent that uses Azure Arc. So there's 2 ways to onboard hybrid workers now. One is through the old log analytics workspace method, connected log analytics workspace method, and the new way, version 2 they're calling it, is through Azure Arc. But you actually still do it through the automation account. It's not quite finished yet, but yeah, that's coming. And obviously you'd be able to use the managed identity of that hybrid worker within your PowerShell runbooks as well. So another advantage there. Yeah.
I'm just seeing if there's any other questions. Just quickly throw your questions in. My headphones are literally complaining about me about having battery issues. Yeah. So quickly throw.
I'm not even sure what time it is, but yeah, we're probably getting close to wrapping up anyway.
Just we're getting close to wrapping up. So I'll open up the floor for a couple more questions. I've got a question from the stream. VS Ansible. I'm not entirely sure what you mean by that. Sorry.
That's not the question, right? That's a person's name or something, is it?
No, that's a question. I'm just if you're able to just kind of clarify what you mean there, that'd be great. I've got another question. So I guess the idea is that an on-prem server admin creates and onboards the server that assigns it to a template configuration, and then Azure Arc will ensure that VM is configured as per the template.
Exactly. Yeah.
I guess that means that the on-prem server agent is no longer needs to manually configure the VM.
Yeah. Exactly.
Cool.
So the only manual step is installing the connected machine agent, and then the rest is done through Azure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you could just have that as part of your standard build. But the first thing it does is install that agent, and then from there on, it's done through Azure.
So one of the things I just quickly want to raise about update management, because I don't know if it's been fixed or not, that within update management, there was a user voice. Oh, never mind. Gear has said that you have answered the question, so all good. One of the things within update management, which was a bit problematic, that I highlighted with Microsoft. Funny story with that, but essentially. Instead of so within Azure itself, so if you've got a resource within Azure itself, you can set tags and those tags can apply to specific patch management groups within update management. However, it didn't apply to Arc joined machines. So, so that's still currently in the works. I raised a user voice on it, and then had a chat to the lady about that. But essentially, that'll be a feature that'll eventually come. So, and that would probably be the best way to manage your update management. And it also means that you decouple yourself from OMS, so you're not having to write some really kind of weird OMS custo queries, and just really simplifies your Azure experience.
Yeah, awesome. That's good to know.
Cool. All right, I've got one more question. We're going to leave it and then we're going to close it. Will the server then use AAD accounts to authenticate and authorize resources on the server?
Oh, that actually is a really good question. Yeah, so if you Azure AD join the server, users can then log on with their Azure AD credentials using the virtual machine, there's a role, virtual machine login or something like that. What's the role called? Let me go and have a look. Racking my brain here, but yeah, the answer to that question is that you will be able to delegate the ability for people to log on to the virtual machines using their Azure AD credentials, which is just awesome, right? So you can say they can log on, and you don't need Active Directory. You can have web servers deployed out all over the web servers or whatever application servers you've got deployed. No Active Directory deployed, just Azure AD join them, and then people can log into them using one set of credentials. And then obviously with that, you then get multi-factor, you get conditional access, and you get all the benefits of Azure AD. So hopefully that answers your question. But if I go add role assignment here, I'm just trying to think of the role name, virtual machine something. So there, virtual machine administrator login, that's the one. Yeah. So once you Azure AD join that virtual machine, they can then log in with either an administrator account or a standard user account.
Gavin quickly asks, will that require continuous online access? Giving Stack a reason to still exist.
Was that sorry?
And then in brackets, giving Stack a reason to still exist.
Oh, yeah. So you do need to, yes. So you do, Azure Arc requires permanent connectivity. In fact, it doesn't bill you when they're not, like for those pricing that I gave you previously, it's actually billed per minute, and it doesn't bill you when they're turned off. So that's how I've been saving money demoing Azure Arc, is I just turn the virtual machines off and I don't get billed. So yeah, it requires permanent connectivity, and it'll show you in the Azure portal that it is disconnected eventually. DC1, there we go, offline or connected. Yeah.
Alrighty, I think we'll leave it there for tonight. Thank you, everyone. If you've got any further questions, where would be the best place to reach you?
Slack, the user group.
Slack, yep. Okay, so for everyone who's joining us, you can jump on the user group. The best place to, if you want to get the, I don't have the link to Slack right now.
We can grab it.
Yeah, but essentially, if you want to, you can just join the Meetup group, and then we can send you the link. It's probably a little bit easier because then we can vet you.
Probably is, right, yeah.
So I'm just going to post the Meetup link in both channel or in both chats. So yeah, feel free to join that, and then we'll send you the Slack link, and then you can continue to send him, and then you can send Wayne DM messages about that mad pirate ship in the background.
Oh yeah, I've been really busy with the Lego.
I was going to say, is that a Sea of Thieves thing?
No, it is. Yeah, it is actually a Sea of Thieves thing. It's not a Sea of Thieves set, but that's why I'm into it.
Yeah.
It's cool. Thanks everyone for coming. I hope you found that useful.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for joining.
Thanks, Wayne. Good presentation.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks, guys. See you later.
Very much.
Thanks.
See ya.
See ya.